What's up, guys? What's up? Welcome back. Dr. Jaws here, and tonight we are going to meet the Broadfin Shark, Lamopsis temmincki. This is a pretty rare species, an endangered species that is native to the Indian and Pacific Oceans. And before we get started, just had this really cool graph, or I guess visualization of the ocean currents. This is going to be a species that probably doesn't have a lot of info. We do have some really cool regional guides and some really cool summaries on the species biology. But as just like an additional fun topic for tonight, I figured it'd be a good time to talk about ocean currents and kind of revisit how they work on a global scale. We have this great visual and that is actually pretty accurate in terms of like how the currents move and flow naturally throughout the oceans. And you can definitely see some marked differences between the tropical or the equator, or the tropical area of the currents, and then the temperate zone, including I guess not my home current, but one of the closest currents to where I am, the Gulf Stream, definitely breaking up into the temperate Northwest Atlantic. So we'll dive into that more later as more people hop on, but this will be kind of fun to go over. And we'll also have a section tonight devoted to deep water currents. And the interaction between the deep water currents and the shallow water currents is really important. So they actually play together. They are linked together, and how they function. One pulls, but they both influence each other in terms of how they flow. And one big issue in regards to climate change is how the currents are going to relate to one another, and how temperature is actually going to affect the water flow for those currents. So we'll go into that more later. But first, let's take a look at some of the basics for the broadfin shark. Which is, I think, our first Lamopsis species. So I'm going to put a pause on this, rewind, so when more people join later, we'll take a closer look. And I think we'll start with our good friend Fishbase, followed by IUCN Red List and shark references as far as what makes Lamopsis Lamopsis. So here we go. This is a kind of a tricky Latin name, temmincki. Lamopsis temmincki, the broadfin shark, described by Mueller and Onlay in 1839. So this is actually one of the older species, or one of the first species of sharks described. Mueller and Onlay are very famous ichthyologists. They're actually the authors of the bull shark and quite a few other species. And this, I think, is the FAO guide illustration, so this is not the original picture, but it's really cool to see a couple features that are familiar to some other members of the Carcharodontidae. So one being the two dorsal fins are fairly equal in size, so that is kind of more like a lemon shark trait. So that actually, is very, very similar to lemon sharks. And we also have the species namesake very clearly illustrated, the broad fin, so broadly triangular fins for the pectoral fins. Pretty equally sized pelvic and anal fins as well. And then a very elongated head and snout. Which is a little bit different from lemon sharks. Lemon sharks have kind of a blunter snout. So most carcharodontids have a very large first dorsal fin and a smaller second dorsal fin, but it's interesting to see in this species, similarly to lemon sharks, both dorsal fins are fairly equal in size. It's also kind of interesting that this is a shallow water species, so it's occupying a similar depth range as lemon sharks and sand tiger sharks, which also have equally sized dorsal fins. Let's go back here to learn more about the species. This is kind of interesting. So I am actually curious about the names. So Lamopsis, etymology not explained nor evident. Perhaps Gill thought Lamopsis temmincki resembled, Opsis is Greek for appearance, members of the family Lamnidae. So one theory about the Latin name, it translates to resembling lamna, which is kind of cool. That actually kind of fits with what I just said about sand tiger sharks. Sand tiger sharks are a lamniform shark. Lamnidae is a little weird because Lamnidae is the big shark, or not the big, but like the famous shark family that has the mako sharks and the great whites. And it's kind of interesting that that's one that's one theory as far as like where the name Lamopsis comes from, because this particular shark doesn't really look a lot like a mako shark or great white. Great whites and makos are very streamlined and very silvery. They're very clearly kind of more like pelagic swimmers with equally sized lobes of their caudal fin, so implying that they're very fast swimmers. This kind of shark has a very large upper lobe of its caudal fin, but the lower lobe is quite small, so that kind of implies it's more of a cruising kind of shark. You can actually make a pretty fair guess of what a shark's biology is and kind of like what its ecology is based on its body plan and the shape of the caudal fin specifically. So for fast swimming pelagic sharks, both lobes of the caudal fin, the upper and the lower, are very equally sized. So they are, like really this really cool crescent shape, and so that implies that it's a very fast swimmer. For reef dwelling sharks like cat sharks, they have a very large upper lobe and almost a non-existent lower lobe. So if the upper lobe is much larger, that kind of implies that it's more of a reef dweller. And then if you have a shark in the middle, kind of like this species, where the upper lobe is larger than the lower lobe, but the lower lobe is still there, it implies it's kind of more of like a cruising type of shark. So a species that probably is more, not necessarily a shallow water shark, but a shark that probably is, a fair swimmer, probably chases down prey in bursts of speed, but it's ultimately kind of like cruises in the water. It's not really like one of those like fast active hunters like the makos or white sharks. This is kind of like a shark that probably just cruises along and then will go after prey in nice bursts of speed, but otherwise just kind of conserves its energy with its body plan. So the species name temmincki is in honor of Conrad Jacob Temminck, director of the Rijksmuseum van Naturalische, I apologize if I'm saying this incorrectly, Naturalische History in the Netherlands, who unlocked the treasures of the museum during the author's visit in 1837. That's actually really cool. This is really fun to see a quote from the 1800s. A lot of shark research from this time period actually has that more flowery language that I really like. It's a little bit more poetic in terms of how they describe things. We actually have a couple of samples from this time period that do detail this shark. So let's try, or have some information on the shark. So let's try the Plagiostoma. I'm trying to find, this is from 18, let me make sure I got this right. A lot of the older text for marine biology, it's kind of incredible that they are scanned and digitally available. So we'll try this one. Actually, let me scroll all the way to the top to determine what this is really quick. This is from the Harvard University Museum of Comparative Zoology. I just want to get a date. Memoirs of the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard College, 1913. So this is over 100 years old, which is really cool to think about. So we do have a section on a shark called Carcharodontis oxyrhynchus, but it looks like it has some synonyms. So sometimes sharks will have synonyms, like the species names will kind of like overlap between species. So, a single species can have synonyms where we're not 100% sure of the classification of the animal. So it will be like you have the main name, but then you have potential synonyms of what it could be. So that might be what's going on, where this could be the broadfin shark, but it's listed under the Carcharodontis oxyrhynchus. And the synonyms are Squalus, Carcharias temmincki, and then Lamopsis temmincki. So from this description from over 100 years ago, it's saying that the head is rather pointed, depressed, snout moderate, length about equal to width of mouth, or to width across the nostrils, rounded at the end. Kind of shortness, don't need to go into all the details. Mouth strongly arched with a short labial fold at the angle. I really like this little figure, by the way. You see this in older texts where you have kind of the tooth counts, where you have like a number range on the top and the bottom, and this actually relates to the number of teeth in the upper jaw and then the number of teeth in the lower jaw. So, which is pretty cool to see. So, and I think this should still be legitimate now, but I don't really see this kind of arrangement as often. So, through. Towards the angles of the mouth, the teeth are very small. Cusps are short. Their cusps are short and broad. Pectorals broad, a little longer than wide. Subtriangular, reaching below the middle of the dorsal. Outer angle sharp and rounded. Let's see. So all of this is about description, but there's not really a lot on behavior. So yellowish brown, lower surfaces yellowish white, Indian seas. The range is interesting, where it could be this species is describing could actually be the broadfin shark. It could be a couple other species. Bull sharks, which slightly resemble this shark, are also found in India. I think there is a lemon shark, the sicklefin lemon shark. I believe that could be found in Indian Ocean as well. So, and we'll take a look at some of the older literature later. I just want to see if there's anything that is kind of more concrete on the broadfin shark, and I don't really see that here. Let's try this article. This one has a little bit more information, but it is in French, so yeah, I don't think I'm going to get more older English text. But what's really cool, again, is that a lot of the original works, and some of the greatest works in ichthyology from the 19th century, are publicly available, and they're available to see online, so which is very exciting. Yeah, so we'll go back to the fish base article on the broadfin shark. Let's see. So the environment fish base is saying is marine, brackish, demersal, amphidromus. So we all know what marine means. Brackish is estuarine, so this shark apparently may enter estuaries, which is kind of cool because it does look a little bit like a river shark too. River sharks of the genus Glyphis have these broader fins as well. So demersal means bottom dwelling, so it likes to stick closer to the bottom. Amphidromus means, if I'm not mistaken, I think amphidromus means going up and down rivers, but let's make 100% sure. We'll check our good friend Wikipedia. Amphidromus, just to make 100% sure, because there's catadromus and anadromus, but amphidromus. Nope, that's not what I want. It's not that. No, I don't want the snails. Catadromus. Fish migration, we'll just look at that. Okay, there we go. So, amphidromus, fish that migrate from freshwater to the sea or vice versa, but not for the purpose of breeding. Instead, they enter saltwater or freshwater as larvae, where they will grow into juveniles before returning to the habitat they originally came from and stay there for the rest of their life, growing into sexually mature adults. So, very interesting use. This is extremely exciting too. This is a nice, shout out to Wikipedia. It's really surprising how much good information is on Wikipedia. I know they caution you don't use it, but this is a whole table of specialized fishes that actually go into freshwater or migrate from freshwater to seawater and back. A lot of these are familiar favorites since I live in the Chesapeake Bay region. I mean, eels like the American eel, herrings like the alewife, menhaden, catfish. So there's a lot here actually. I'm kind of curious if they list any sharks here. We have lampreys and sturgeons. Usually sharks are found in between, so they may not be listing any. Looks like they're not, which makes sense because there are sharks that go into freshwater habitats to feed. Don't think there's any sharks maybe the river sharks, but I don't think there's any sharks that go from freshwater to saltwater to breed. There's definitely sharks that go from saltwater to estuarine water to breed, but not technically freshwater. So, um, for fish migration, the two terms that hey Howard, good evening. Sorry, just saw your comment. Hope you're doing well and hope you had a really great weekend. Thank you for joining. I had a fun adventure last weekend. I don't have any footage yet, so I will post that on the channel. But went to Assateague Island in Maryland, and it was really awesome. It's a really cool place where I don't know if you've heard of Chincoteague. Chincoteague is like the famous location in Virginia where they have like the wild horses. But the funny thing about it is, Chincoteague like markets all of that, but Chincoteague I think are kind of in a restricted area and you can only see the horses through a fence. Whereas Assateague, which is directly connected to Chincoteague, it's you can't drive there directly. Like the islands are connected, but you have to kind of go all the way around to get there. But Assateague allows the horses to roam freely, and you can actually hop onto the island, and the horses are like right next to your car. And so, and I was just there for doing snorkeling actually. So I didn't really, I forgot that there were horses there to be honest. But it was a really fun little trip, and drove over to Assateague and was very carefully minding the horses, which were like, all over the park. I probably saw maybe like 10 individuals. And it was kind of amazing how close they were getting to the car. But kind of drove past them, went to a little place to rent a kayak. Kayaked over to a very quiet cove on, I think it's Signpunxent Bay, which is probably part of Chincoteague Bay. And then went snorkeling. Did not see any sharks, unfortunately, but saw a lot of cool little fish and sea cucumber. My first sea cucumber, which actually freaked me out, because I don't know if you're familiar with sea cucumbers. When they are contracted, they look like potatoes, so, completely harmless and, very, very safe looking, right? And then when they expand, they're cousins of starfish. When they expand, they have these like very long, very weird tentacles, or I guess arms, if you will. They're not really tentacles; they're kind of more like arms. And when I was looking at it, it was a different individual in the seagrass. I was very confused what I was seeing, and I actually got a little nervous. I was like, "Oh man, am I near like this giant worm?" Because we have worms that actually bite you in this region. So, but no, it was just a sea cucumber, nice and harmless. But it's one of the few things that had really caught me by surprise. So it was a good trip overall. So once I get the footage, I will post it on the channel just for fun. But yeah, good trip overall. I hope you had a great weekend as well. And then in the United States, it was Independence Day weekend, so it was a 3-day weekend. So that's a holiday that I think also Canadian, is it Canada Day or Canadian Independence Day? That was recently too. That was I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. The American Independence Day was last weekend, or last Friday, I should say. So, but yeah. Speaking of bays, we were talking about how the broadfin shark is amphidromous. The two terms I'm familiar with are anadromous, which are fish that migrate from the sea into the freshwater to spawn, such as salmon. Salmon is probably the most famous anadromous fish, striped bass, and sea lamprey, but salmon are the big ones. Catadromous are fish that migrate from freshwater down into the sea to spawn, such as eels. Catadromous fish are very uncommon. They're not as common as the anadromous fish, so eels are really kind of the exception as far as that kind of life cycle process. So anyway, we were looking at that. The depth range is down to 50 meters, which for a shark, that's actually pretty shallow when we look back at the broadfin shark. So we said amphidromous, marine, brackish, demersal. 50 meters is the maximum depth range, which is really, really shallow. And it's actually a little scary conservation-wise because it's you don't really have a refuge at depth at 50 meters. You're still subject to a lot of fishing pressure, so that might be a factor in terms of why the species is endangered. So, distribution is Indian Ocean, records validated from India and Bangladesh. IUCN assessment needs to be revised for Lamopsis temmincki, since Lamopsis tephrodes was resurrected from its synonymy. So it looks like there's been a lot of classification or taxonomic confusion with this species. It's unfortunately, I mean, like as we know on this channel, a lot of sharks are classified and reclassified. Both living and prehistoric sharks are constantly reassigned through time, even just in the span of a decade. So it's pretty interesting to see that there was another Lamopsis in the past. Maximum length is 1.6 meters for a male, and then 2 meters for a female. So it's about 6.5 feet maximum. Published weight is 52 kilos. So pretty good medium-sized shark. Gray or yellow-gray above, lighter below. No conspicuous markings as far as color. Biology: it's a little-known shark found in coastal inshore waters. Probably feeds on small fishes and invertebrates. Viviparous, so live-bearing. Not known to be dangerous to people. Meat utilized fresh and dried, salted for human consumption. Liver for oil. Caught irregularly by inshore gillnet fisheries, particularly those operating off Borneo. I was reading descriptions of the species, but here we can actually take a closer look at what the broadfin shark looks like. So let me see if I can reposition this so you get a better view. Cannot wait for them to update this. There we go. Okay. Can I make that bigger? Okay, awesome. So this is the broadfin shark, and a really unique looking shark. So the namesake is very appropriate. Huge pectoral fins relative to body size, and equally sized dorsal fins like the illustration, but these are actually quite a bit smaller than the illustration suggested. So that's actually pretty fascinating to see. The caudal fin proportions are also a little weirder than the illustration suggested. The upper lobe is larger than the lower lobe, but the lower lobe is still pretty big relatively compared to the upper lobe. The snout is still quite pointed and quite forward, so it's actually less resembling of a lemon shark than I thought, and actually it looks a little bit more like glyphis, so the river sharks. These are a mix of shark pups. I can't tell if these are really broadfin shark pups. They might be. Because the fins do look pretty large. The the dorsal fins look comparatively quite small, so that might be accurate. And we'll kind of go through all these photos. That one's angled a little weirdly. There we go. That looks a lot more accurate. So, because the snout is unusually kind of pointed. The fins are a bit larger. It's kind of interesting to see at in the juvenile stage. Oh, awesome! Canada Day was July 1st. I don't think I wish you a proper Happy Canada Day. So, Happy Canada Day. That is really cool. I love that they both are kind of in a similar timeline or time frame. But Happy Canada Day, Howard. I'm definitely celebrating. So, but juvenile broadfin shark. Really nice. I mean, it's sad to see a deceased individual, but this is a really nice view of the underside of the pectoral fins. Really cool and unique shark fin shape, actually, for pectoral fins. Almost like a perfect triangle. Like really, I can't think of another, at least carcharodonid shark species that has fins like this. So. Larger individual, you can see more pronounced fins, a little bit more girth on the body, and actually the dorsal fins in this individual seem like they're larger as well. And I think that's it. So not a lot of images of this endangered species. This is really cool. I think this is one of the first illustrations of the broadfin shark. Yeah, image of the this is from 1839. So love shark art. And actually, this is fairly accurate. The fin proportion is beautiful. Really well done, and actually, I think very accurate compared to the photos that we just saw. You can absolutely tell from this sketch that this was of an individual that was definitely affected by preservatives, so it definitely looks emaciated. You can see some of the chondrocranium, so like the skin is kind of like shrinking in, so the chondrocranium is a little bit more prominent here. The pectoral fins, you can see a huge gap between the free rear tip of the pectoral. Oh, sorry, the dorsal fins. Excuse me. The dorsal fins, you can see a clear gap between the free rear tip of the dorsal fins and the back. So that's also a sign of, like, I don't know if it's alcohol that they used or probably not formalin, because I don't know how old formalin is. So this is probably alcohol as far as preservative. But yeah, it's actually really cool. And I never really realized it. Older illustrations of sharks, they have these like weird squared fins, and they all look thin. And I never really connected the dots in terms of like, why do they look like that? I guess like artists of the past are kind of bad. And the reality is, no, they actually probably were good, and the individuals that they were working on illustrating were probably just very damaged. So, yeah. Really nice sketch of the teeth here. So we'll see if we can. And this is kind of cool. This is named Carcharius Priondon temmincki in the original description. So, really wild-looking teeth. Pretty dangerous. Nice triangular teeth. Very pointed. So they almost look like mako shark teeth in the upper jaw. So really excellent hunting teeth. And I'm assuming based on the body size, this is probably a fish eater. But by the tooth shape, this kind of suggests a slightly more generalist dentition, which is a little freaky. The lower teeth are very narrow and very pointed, so this is definitely the tooth shape of a piscivore, so a shark that loves to eat fish. This is probably really great for squid too, so really nice hook-shaped teeth, perfect for spearing fish. But again, those upper teeth, whenever you see broad or triangular upper teeth, it should be kind of scary, because that gets closer and closer to a tooth type that is capable of dismembering large prey. So really cool and very intimidating set of teeth here for this individual, or this species, I should say. While we're here, we'll check the the sharkreferences.com profile of the broadfin shark. And there is a more recent photograph of a pup, so a smaller shark. Can't tell if it's young of the year or not. Young of the year sharks typically have an umbilical scar, but it's impossible to see that from this angle. The interesting names of the species include broadfin shark and the fawn shark. So a very interesting English name. We also have Tiburon alaton and then Requiem grandes ailes. I really should learn French someday, because I would make this sound much prettier than it is. So we already have the description. We don't need to go into details, because I do think this is a pretty iconic species. It really, and it's one of the fun cases of an English name really capturing exactly what the shark is all about. The broadfin shark is beautifully named, and that key feature of the really enormous proportionally pectoral fins in tandem with the two equally shaped dorsal fins, I feel like that makes this species unmistakable. I don't think you could confuse this with another shark. Like, it looks close to river sharks, but I feel like river sharks, like spear-tooth sharks, like I think you could probably tell them apart from this species because of the broad pectoral fin. Let's see. I already passed through the description. I'm very curious to check out the IUCN range, so we'll check that out in a little bit. 4 to 8 pups per litter, so not great, but not bad. Gestation period of 8 months. That's actually pretty good for a shark. That's many sharks take 2 or 3 years as far as their full reproductive cycle, so that's actually pretty okay. Little known shark found in coastal inshore waters. Feeds mainly on crustaceans, so Eratosquilla species, crabs and prawns. Cephalopods, so octopus. Logleo is a squid. Fin fishes. And yeah. We already talked about the habitat. The teeth in the upper jaw, high cordiform shape, recto-semially oblique, serrated cusps and no cusplets. So the serration, again, is a really interesting trait, because that is more like suggesting the capability of dismembering large prey. Like, serrated teeth are not very common in the shark world, or for large species having serrated teeth, that's not very common. So, and that's kind of more of a specialized tooth type, believe it or not. I know it's like the most famous tooth, but it is actually more of a specialization for hitting larger prey. Oh, so more images, so including one we have not seen before. So this is a new image, and it's kind of cool. It, at first glance, almost looks like a bull shark, but it's just those two dorsal fins are extremely different from bulls. And actually, that first dorsal fin is very broadly triangular. That really looks very, very close to a river shark of the genus Glyphis. But again, you have the huge pectoral fins. These are kind of like the equivalent of a sandbar shark's dorsal fin. Like sandbar sharks have the enormous, characteristic, iconic dorsal fin. And likewise, the Broadfin Shark has enormous, characteristic, iconic pectoral fins. All the fins on this animal are actually very broad, which is kind of interesting to see. We saw this image before, so we'll just kind of breeze through these. This one is a little new. And then here is a nice view of the teeth. Let me see if I can zoom out. Okay, there we go. So you can actually kind of see, the resolution may not be great, but you can actually kind of see the serrations a little bit here on the upper teeth, and they do look pretty rough actually. They're pretty big. So I'm curious. I mean, it's a medium-sized shark, so it would not go after. I guess it would not go after marine mammals based on size, but still, serrated teeth, and especially like broad triangular serrated teeth. That's actually it's a pretty capable tooth type. So for hitting larger prey items, so pretty interesting to see there. All right, let's check out the IUCN Red List profile of the Broadfin Shark. And I think after that, before we learn more, we'll talk about ocean currents. I said at the top of the stream that it would be fun to kind of cover that topic today. So this is an endangered species, and this is the current range. So Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Malaysia, Malaysia. So kind of a smaller distribution across the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, so subdivisions of the Indian Ocean. And then looking in detail, the Broadfin shark is a medium-sized shark ranging from Pakistan to Thailand in the northern Indian Ocean. It is found inshore on the continental shelf in depths of less than 50 meters. The species is caught in a variety of fishing gear, including demersal trawl, gill net, hook and line, stake net, and bag nets, and is retained for human consumption. It was once known to be common, but has declined drastically in the past 2 decades in India and is now rarely encountered in all other range states. Catches declined by an order of magnitude in just over a decade between 2003 and 2004 to 2016 between Gujarat and Mumbai. Although landings data are not a direct measure of abundance, these could be used to infer population reduction where landings have decreased while fishing effort has remained stable or increased. Reconstruction of catches of mainly carcharinids for the western and northern Indian Ocean infer declines of 67% when scaled to 3 generation lengths or 20 years. It is suspected that the Broadfin shark has undergone a population reduction of 50 to 79% over the past 3 generation lengths, 20 years, due to levels of exploitation, and is assessed as endangered. So this is a pretty classic endangered species assessment, just very clearly based on inferred population decline with no further evidence contradicting that. So there we go. But so very sad. It's also sad to see that the population trend is decreasing for the species. So let's see if we can learn more about that. The Broadfin shark is a rare and poorly known species. Reports from India indicate that several shark stocks are either declining or have already collapsed. The Broadfin shark is particularly vulnerable to trawl fisheries, and there are indications of increasing effort on the western coast of India. is considered rare throughout most of its Indian range and rarely observed or reported from commercial fish catches along the Indian coast, except from the northwest of India, Maharashtra region, where it was once considered to be a common. Most of the available records are from Mumbai, India. It was once known to be common in this area, but has drastically declined in the past 2 decades. In 2003-2004, landings of 513 tons of the species were reported from Gujarat to Mumbai. Evidence of declines in catches of the species are now reported, with catches reaching 82 tons in Mumbai in 2016. Additionally, landing surveys from 2013 and 2014 in Gujarat and Mumbai only recorded 7 specimens. Ugh. So, not looking good in India. In Pakistan, it used to be caught as bycatch of trawl fisheries that operated on the intercontinental. However, it is now seldom caught and has almost disappeared from commercial catches. The species was historically present in Bangladesh, but only 14 specimens have been collected in recent landing surveys. They were captured in large mesh gill nets at 40 to 75 meters depth. While there is limited information available on the species in the region, it is rarely encountered despite ongoing research efforts. Its large size and the presence of intensive fisheries mean that, like many other large carcharodontids in the region, it is likely to have declined. Reconstructed catches of related species are available at the large marine ecosystem scale. This is interesting. That is Carcharodontidae, so Carcharodontiid species, the hard-nosed shark, spot-tailed shark, tawny nurse shark, and Triachidae. Although landings data are not a direct measure of abundance, these can be used to infer population reduction where landings have decreased, while fishing effort has remained stable or increased. The aggregate catch of those closely related species are available from the western and northern Indian Ocean and Red Sea, ranging from Tanzania to Thailand. Reconstructed catches rose rapidly since the 1960s, peaking at a catch of 90,984 tons in 1974. It's really sad. It feels like the 70s and the 70s and the 80s were really like the beginning of the end as far as shark. Or let me rephrase that. The 70s and the 80s were really, I feel like, the moment in time where fishery stocks really started to crash. I think there are a couple examples in the 40s, 50s, maybe 60s, but in the 70s and 80s, that's really the classic time period. Where shark stocks have started to decline, and then I think the 90s and the 2000s were the beginning of like, oh, we really need to manage sharks and keep an eye on them. The 10s and the 20s, I should say the 2020s are the beginning of some slight sliver of hope, because I know in the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, their shark survey, they started to record a very slight uptick in abundance for shark species, but it's a very cautious optimism because there's still so much more that needs to be done. And for species like sandbar sharks and dusky sharks, it's their populations have been so decimated that they really do need a long time to recover. But recoveries are possible. I've talked about striped bass before, and that's a really great example of a fish that, with proper management, bounced back. At least in the Chesapeake Bay region. So it is possible to bring species back. And I talk about bald eagles all the time on the stream, but that's another great example of a species that was really not doing well and with a lot of concerted effort was brought back. So let's see. The species has declined drastically in parts of its range over the past 3 generation lengths. It is now rare, whereas once common, and carcharodontids have declined by 67% over the past 3 generation lengths, 20 years. It is suspected that the broadfin shark has undergone a population reduction of 50 to 79% over the past 3 generation lengths due to levels of exploitation. So things are looking dire, and the remedy is conservation. So let's see, is there anything going on with the broadfin shark, conservation-wise? There are no species-specific conservation measures in place. India and Pakistan have seasonal trawl bans that may benefit the species. However, incidental catches occur in other fisheries, for example lawn lining, to which they are susceptible. To conserve the population and to permit recovery, a suite of measures will be required, which may include species protection, spatial management, bycatch mitigation, and harvest, and trade management measures, including international trade measures. Effective enforcement of measures will require ongoing training and capacity building, including in the area of species identification. Catch monitoring is needed to help understand population trends and inform management. So that's really bad. You know, what's really bad is like there is a requirement for a research effort to monitor the population, and then after that, there's going to be a need for like an education program for fishermen to help identify the species, which will help them kind of. It's tricky because it's like sharks are very hard. Like I think to an average person, sharks are very very hard to tell apart. To be honest, they're very, and even for professionals, like they're, you know, once you get to certain groups, they can be very tricky, and so it's hard. It looks like it's kind of an uphill battle for the species, which is really sad. Where you need the research effort in terms of monitoring how the populations are doing first. Then you would need the education program. So kind of, which, you know, implementing it not that hard probably. As far as like, you know, creating identification guides and passing them out, that's probably not as hard. But you know, the efficacy of that's going to be kind of tricky, as far as, you know, how many people will, you know, really mind those guides and really, you know, retain that information. It's hard to tell, right? And then you will need legal enforcement, which is probably the most difficult piece, because there are examples of countries that, you know, do have on paper legal protection measures for sharks, but they're not enforcing them, and so it's kind of a toothless piece of legislation. So it's tricky. There's a lot that needs to be done for this species, and it, again, kind of unfortunately, very sadly, looks like it might be a bit of an uphill battle for the broadfin shark, which is very sad. But, you know, we've known the species for over 100 years, so and the nice thing is there are things like the IUCN Red List which kind of have accumulated data on the species, and you know, it's great to see a summary of, like, you know, what's going on with it. Let's take a look, actually, because I think I have a couple of articles relating to this shark, as well as species identification guides. So I kind of want to hop to one of those first, and then we'll kind of look more at species conservation in particular. So here we go. This is what I wanted to see. So this is an FAO guide. I keep talking about FAO, but FAO is really great. This is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Lamopsis temmincki. Local names in... Let's see where this is. This is page 96, so I just want to double check where this guide is from. Field Identification Guide to Living Marine Resources of Pakistan. So I talked about this before, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, but these are great guides. And it's not just for sharks, it's for all fishes. And they actually publish these and update these pretty consistently. And they have really cool regional focuses. So there'll be one on Pakistan. I've seen one for sharks of the North Atlantic. Coastal Australia. Like they have like these really cool sub-regional divisions. But these are meant to help people of this region, of the region that the guide is focused on, identify fish species, and it's particularly helpful for sharks. So for Pakistan, the local names are Gusi or Guso. I don't know if it's pronounced Gussie or Gusso. But Lamopsis temmincki, English FAO name is Broadfin Shark. Habitat is inshore continental shelf. I'll zoom in for a better view. There we go. Fisheries, gill nets, line gears, bottom trawls. Distinctive characters. The snout is moderately long, nearly equal to mouth width. Small round eyes. Second dorsal fin nearly as large as first. Upper precaudal pit longitudinal. Pectoral fin broad and triangular. Anal fin with posterior margin nearly straight, which I actually never noticed. That's really cool. 29 to 37 teeth in upper jaw and 28 to 34 in lower jaw. Upper teeth serrated and with broad triangular cusps. Lower teeth with smooth, hooked, narrow cusps. The color is light gray or tan above, light below, with no prominent markings. These are great guides because they just focus on the key characteristics, the things that help people identify sharks when they're not necessarily studying them. So it's actually very, very helpful and serves a really great purpose. This is an interesting article that I'm going to push over here. We might save that for the end. What is this? I think this is another fisheries guide of some sort. And we'll take a look. It is. So let's see. What page is this? 113. I'm going to zoom to the top again to see what guide this is. An atlas on the Lazarbank fishery resources of India. Okay. So we might have seen this in passing before. So species profile for Lamopsis temmincki, the broadfin shark. Vernacular names in Marathi is Kirwa or Mushi. I like Mushi. Canada is... I can't tell if these are... Oh yeah, no. Canada is Ndontu. Malayalam is Thakan Sravu. Tamil is Korasura. I like that one a lot, actually. And Telugu is Noti Sura. So, Korasura is probably my favorite vernacular name for the species. So, and it's really cool to see local names for sharks. I actually really enjoy seeing that. I like that this guide includes the superorder sharks, so Slacoidii. So these are the Salacians, so like the true modern sharks, which are separate from rays. Other scientific names in use. This is an interesting section. Carcharodontis temmincki and Eulamia temmincki, or temmincki. Sorry. So Carcharodontis and Eulamia, very interesting names that are considered synonyms. It's very odd, but we've already talked about distinctive identification features, so don't need to spend more time on that. Maximum size is 1.6 meters for the male sharks. Distribution global is Indian Ocean, West Pacific, off Pakistan, India, Burma, Indonesia, Sarawak, and China. So that's actually a larger range than IUCN Relics is suggesting. Depth is an inshore shark commonly found only along the west coast of India in the Bombay region. Let's see, we have catch records. The food preference is small fishes and invertebrates. The role in the food chain is tertiary, so a higher predator. Type of breeding is viviparous, 4 to 8. I like how they make young ones a single word. And then they have notes on breeding season as well as regional seasonal abundance in an appendix, so we'll take a look at that. In India, the meat is utilized fresh for human consumption, fins for soup. The liver oil for the species is reported to be of high vitamin A potency, so it looks like this is the shark. Unfortunately, is the shark's liver is used for drugs or medicine. Conservation and management says whether endangered or banned says no, but that's not correct. At least for IUCN, this is an endangered species. So maybe India does not recognize it as an endangered species, but the IUCN Red List recognizes the broadfin shark as endangered. General remarks: common along the west coast of India, Mumbai region during January, March, and September through December. And then there is a photograph of a deceased individual, again with the prominently broad fins. So, this is also great. This is a range chart for the species of India. Pretty interesting. I'm curious if we could get to the appendices. Okay. Yeah, this is on its side, so we'll kind of skip this. Okay, I think that's all the guides that I have. So, oh, do I have one more? Nope, we already looked at that guide. So I think that is all the guides that I have. So, I think we'll take a quick little break to review ocean currents. So I mentioned this was at the top of the stream, and I feel like it's probably a good species to take a look at broader marine science tonight. Because since it is so rare, the broadfin shark doesn't have a lot of information on it, so I just want to make sure that I kind of came prepared to discuss more than this species. So I feel like currents are a good subject. So here we go. So this is from NASA. Really great visualization of ocean currents that are based on temperature. So you have warm water being represented in orange, red, cool. I guess like coolish water being represented yellow and green, cold water being blue, and the coldest water being black. And you can kind of see from this visualization this really incredible movement of the ocean currents and how they all interplay. And prominently, you see these two really interesting currents. You see the Gulf Stream on the northwestern Atlantic, so the east coast of North America here. And we'll zoom in on this in a second because I do think the Gulf Stream is a really interesting case study. You also see a similar current off Japan. I want to say... I think I know what that's called, but let me just check really quick. Ocean currents map. I want to say that is the... Okay, I was kind of close. The Kuroshio current. So the Kuroshio current is this one. As far as famous currents, we have, so I mentioned the Gulf Stream here, you can see. This is the equatorial current hitting the top end of Brazil and moving into the Caribbean. We also have the equatorial current going around the equator very, very clearly. You have a little bit of the Brazilian current here, but not too strongly right now. This is tricky. The Agulhas current is the one on the on Africa's east coast. Whoops. Sorry. And actually, coming out from from the Arabian Peninsula into, I believe that is Ethiopia, and then the east coast of Africa is the Agulhas current. You also have the Mozambique current coming around Madagascar. The East Australian current, made famous by Finding Nemo, is actually quite visible here as well on the far right of the map. And those are some of the big basic ones, but the one that I'm most familiar with is the Gulf Stream, and we'll zoom in on that in a second. But it's really cool to see in this visualization just how, and this is going to sound very dumb, fluid ocean currents are. Ocean currents are really important because they transport a lot of nutrients, fish. They take elements from one part of the ocean and move them across the ocean, and it's a huge mechanism for, the big thing I can think of is larval fish transport, just species transport. A lot of species actually truly get caught in the currents or ride the currents, migrating to a new location. So with that, I'm going to rewind this and take a look at the Gulf Stream specifically. So let's zoom in because there's actually a lot of cool stuff you can see happening here. Okay, here we go. So this is the Gulf Stream. It is zooming up into the Gulf of Mexico, around Florida, hitting the Carolinas, and then it kind of comes off the northeast. And the big thing that you can see here are these rings, these like bubbles. These are eddies. And what's extremely cool about the Gulf Stream eddies is these are kind of like traps for ocean animals. So you have warm core eddies, which are the yellow ones or the green ones, like the brightly colored ones that kind of spin off the Gulf Stream. This one is actually really, really prominent right here. This is a pocket of warm water that breaks off of the Gulf Stream current and just kind of floats in the ocean until it disappears. It is a trap because it is a kind of a false sense of security for tropical animals caught in this current. So a lot of animals get caught in these warm core eddies and actually wind up in places where they're not meant to be. The famous examples on the east coast of the United States, in Canada, well, maybe not Canada, because I think Canada is a little too far away from the Gulf Stream to see this, but in the United States, you do get lionfish in weird places like New York and Rhode Island. They will get lionfish sometimes. Butterfly fish, which is actually not that weird. Butterfly fish are caught in these currents so frequently that they're actually a staple of the Chesapeake Bay field guide. You'll see them pretty reliably in the bay. And then you can actually see butterfly fish even as far north as New Jersey, maybe even New York. So, which is kind of cool because butterfly fish are a very pretty prominent, pretty famous reef species, tropical coral reef species. You also get angelfish, like the gray angelfish or French angelfish. And conversely, you can kind of see, it's hard to see in this graph, but just as the Gulf Stream is creating warm core eddies, there is an equivalent creation of something called cold core eddies. So these are rings and pockets of cold water, and they're going to bring down weird cold water animals. The most famous ones I can think of are orca whales. So we do get killer whales or orcas off this coast of the United States. They're not known to be here. They're not famous for being here, but we do get them, and part of the theory is they are getting caught in cold core eddies or riding them. I don't know if orcas really have temperature preferences as far as, I don't know if they truly prefer cold water. I feel like they prefer cold water because I don't think there's really any famous instances of orcas in tropical locations. Because when you think of like famous orca locations, you think of like the Pacific Northwest, which is temperate, Norway, which is temperate, South Africa, which is temperate, so New Zealand, which is temperate. I mean, it's tropical in the northern part, but so I don't know if orcas maybe don't like warm water or what. But anyway, for the orca encounters that we have here on the east coast of the United States, famously North Carolina, and I think Virginia had one. I know North Carolina had one, but the theory was that the orcas were caught in a cold core eddy, which is related to just the Gulf Stream ultimately. So the Gulf Stream is a really important mechanism here. More to say about it. Let's replay that video because I just think it's really interesting. And then we'll take another look at a different current video. But the Gulf Stream is really important. The big thing is, I mean, look at the surrounding dark water, and look how the Gulf Stream is just this like streak of red, yellow, orange in this part of the ocean. If we didn't have the Gulf Stream, the entire coast of the United States and the entire coast of the British Isles and Iceland would be very, very different. The Gulf Stream, shoots past this coast and creates this like warm bathwater effect for Georgia and the Carolinas. So this is part of what makes famous holiday destinations like Myrtle Beach or Fripp Island or the Georgia Sea Islands, or even parts of the Crystal Coast and the southern Outer Banks. Not really the Outer Banks, but the southern Outer Banks. This is what makes them, pleasant, warm bathwater like destinations. It's the Gulf Stream. And the Gulf Stream in addition, warms up the surrounding water and, can create these really cool anomalies like the tropical migrants that I mentioned. But you can see that the Gulf Stream dissipates into this broad area that just kind of drifts towards the west coast of Europe. This is the North Atlantic Drift, and this is part of what makes Ireland and England, Great Britain, the climate that it is, where for a latitude this high, Ireland and Great Britain are actually pretty temperate. They're pretty like green and lush, and they're really like not as cold as they should be. Because when you look, and this is a really great measurement right here, the latitude of Ireland and Great Britain is the same latitude as Labrador. Labrador is cold, like in Canada. Like and you could see kind of a difference where Labrador has the Labrador Current, which is a cold water current coming from the Arctic. You can see all the darkness around Labrador as far as like this is freezing water. You do see a little bit of that darkness around Ireland and Great Britain in this model, but you do see the big push of the North Atlantic Drift towards Western Europe, and this is definitely a warming effect for Western Europe. If the Gulf Stream shut down, or if climate change messed up ocean currents, this will have a weird compounding effect that would completely change climate for Europe, for North America. Both would, weirdly enough, potentially might get colder depending on how the currents shift. So if there's a weird thing to disrupt how the Gulf Stream flows, and if the Gulf Stream doesn't flow in this direction anymore, ironically, that could actually create colder conditions in northwestern Europe. So currents are really cool, very fascinating, and you can see how complex they are here. I mean, they are truly like rivers within the sea. So, and then we'll just do a little shout out to the East Australian Current. Again, this is the famous Finding Nemo current. The Great Barrier Reef is right up here, and you can see how Dory Marlin took this to get to Sydney. It's a great plot point. I really appreciate the focus on the currents in that movie. So now we'll take another look at current models before returning to our shark. This one is, in one sense, it's not as detailed, but in another, it's actually really cool that it will go into deep water currents and shallow water currents. So the currents that I just showed are shallow water currents, but those are intertwined with a deeper layer, kind of like, think of like the subway. It's like the shallow water currents are like the streets of New York, the deep water currents are like the subway of New York. So, and they're all related. Like people go up and down between those two sections. Water goes up and down between the two sections. So, this is a really great refresher. So here we go. Cold water has higher density than warm water and sinks to the bottom. Salt water has a higher density than fresh water and sinks to the bottom. So across the ocean, deep water is colder and saltier and denser, and shallow water is comparatively fresher, definitely warmer, and less dense. And you should be able to see how this interplays with each other. So cross-section of ocean circulation. So this is a cool guide of if you did a cross-section with the equator towards the North Pole. So the equator has warm water heated up by the sun. So let's say this is, I think Aruba is close to the equator, So you get further up north, Caribbean, Bahamas, Florida. Now you're getting into a temperate zone. Heat is radiating back. The water temperature is starting to decrease, so now you're getting back into Georgia, Carolinas, Virginia, Chesapeake Bay, where I am, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, going up and up and up, New England, Nova Scotia, Labrador. Now you're starting to hit the poles. Now the water is getting much colder and it's starting to sink. Decreasing temperature, increasing salinity. You have icebergs. So my fiance was literally watching a documentary on Titan. And how that relates to Titanic and icebergs, and just kind of funny. Same area, Labrador. So anyway, let me rewind that. Sorry, I went on a tangent. Density of the water is increasing. This water sinks. The deep water forms and into this, like all this water is like sinking. The sinking is creating motion, and the deep water is flowing underneath the shallow water. And you can actually see this is a great, it's a simple but excellent, sorry about that, cross section of what's going on here, where you have a warm water current like the Gulf Stream just moving through the ocean. As it cools, it sinks. The sinking is pulling the water down. The water flows in the opposite direction in the form of a countercurrent in the depths. And, it will get back towards the equator. Once it's at the equator, it's starting to like warm up again and starts to rise again. And ultimately, it creates this really cool cycle of warm water moving into deep water, into deep cold water, and then rising up again as warm water. And so it's this constant motion where each part of the flow, if you will, is like pulling the other part. And so you have the currents. You have like these amazing flows of water through the ocean. So it's kind of like rivers in the middle of the sea, if you will. So you can start to see this. So this is great. So now we see like the Gulf Stream flowing north of 30 degrees. There's a parallel current in the Pacific Ocean. Ultimately, you have the North Atlantic Drift. You have a circulation where it is the North Atlantic Gyre, which is the ultimate circulation of the warm water currents. Okay. So North Pacific Gyre, which surrounds Hawaii, North Atlantic Gyre. You have similar and opposite gyres in the South Atlantic, in the Indian Ocean and South Pacific. It's kind of like that myth of the. It's like if you flush a toilet south of the equator, it goes in the opposite direction. If you flush a toilet north of the equator, it's the opposite direction of south of the equator. I don't know if you guys heard of that, but anyway. But this is related to how the Earth spins, the Coriolis effect. As the Earth is spinning and spinning and spinning, north equator and south equator go in different directions. So, which is really cool. It's amazing to see how the physics work here. This second layer is talking about how warm water fades into cold water and then rises back as warm water, and how that ultimately connects. So there's the Gulf Stream that becomes the North Atlantic Drift. Yep. Without the ocean currents, it would be much colder in the North Pole. Without the ocean currents, it would be much warmer at the South Pole, at the equator. So aside from transporting animals, like larval animals and fish, which are kind of animal, the currents also moderate temperature on the planet. And so this is another concern of climate change, where if you warm the water too much at the equator, does it change the flow of the currents, and ultimately is that going to have an effect on how the currents flow specifically. So very important part of oceanography. Really important part of larval fish transport, which ultimately is a very important part for sharks, because it's talking about like what they feed on. And as far as sharks themselves, I'd be very curious to know how sharks interplay with the currents, and think of like large pelagic sharks like blue sharks probably make use of them. Scalped hammerheads are probably another species that makes use of the currents as well. So they have a very important role to play across the entirety of the ocean. So I figured it would be a fun thing to talk about as we talk about the broadfin shark tonight, just as general oceanography. So, speaking of the broadfin shark, there is an interesting article that is going to be a little bit more solid science, but I think it would be worth it. So, and while I'm going through this, if anybody has a suggestion of next week's shark, please leave in the comments, and I'd love to consider it. I think my only advice is we should probably move away. We've been covering a lot of the carchariniforms lately, like the cat sharks and cousin of the snaggletooth shark, and like a lot of really great species, but I think we should try to do a different order. So whether that's like an angel shark or a a bullhead shark, or probably not a lamniform because we've done a lot of them, but like a carpet shark, even a dogfish shark of some kind, like a deep water squaliform. That'd be a lot of fun for next week. That's my suggestion, but as always, we can cover anything. And also, carp rhinoforms is the largest order of sharks in the world, so no worries if we cover another carp rhinoform. So. Let me see if I could squish this so everybody can read this. There we go. Okay. Resurrection and redescription of the Borneo Broadfin Shark. Lamopsis. Oops. Sorry. Lamopsis tephrodes. Fowler, 1905. Carp rhinoforms today. This is by William T. White, Peter R. Lass, Gavin J. Naylor, and Mark Harris. So Naylor is. I think everybody here is shark scientist. I recognize Naylor. I think everybody here is actually a lot of shark publications. Here's the abstract. We won't read the whole thing. Kind of like go through some of the key points, but. The genus Lamopsis was previously considered to be monotypic, represented by a single species, Lamopsis temmincki. Recent molecular analyses from across a range of this genus has shown that two species should be recognized, one in the Indian Ocean centered around India, and another in the western central Pacific centered around Borneo. Lamopsis tephrodes, Fowler 1905, was described from Borneo and is resurrected from being a junior synonym of Lamopsis temmincki to a valid species. A redescription of Lamopsis tephrodes, based largely on recently collected material, is provided. This species differs from Lamopsis temmincki in dentition, some morphological characters, and possibly size. It also exhibits substantial DNA sequence divergence in the mitochondrial marker ND2. A lectotype is also herein designated for Lamopsis temmincki. The conservation of these species needs to be reassessed, with both species likely to fall in one of the highly threatened IUCN Red List categories. So, when was this published? Because that is actually critically important. We already know that the broadfin shark is endangered currently, but if the broadfin shark is two species hiding in plain sight, that actually might make it critically endangered. So that's actually very serious. Let's see, resurrection redescription of broadfin shark. I wanted to see when this article was published. Where is this? Ooh, Howard, clouded angel shark. Yes, I think that'd be perfect. Let me see. Great suggestion. This is Squatina nebulosa. Let me make sure we have not covered that species. I don't think we have, but I'm gonna double check. Also, happy episode 123. It's kind of wild. 123. It's kind of wild that we've covered 123 sharks, and we're just getting started. We have not cracked anywhere near a third of them. There's so many, which is super cool. I don't think I have an angel shark playlist, so I think we should be good. Alright, so clouded angel shark. Squatina nebulosa. Beautiful. I would love to see an angel shark again. So thank you, Howard. That's an awesome suggestion. So that will be next week's species. So, I'm going to go back to what this is. Oh, this is actually... There we go. Okay. Descriptions of new sharks and rays from Borneo. So this is... We've seen this before, maybe for the river sharks. We've definitely seen this before. This is a really cool... this almost looks like a book, actually. And this should show me where this is from. Also, by the way, beautiful photograph of... I want to say it's a honeycomb ray. That almost looks like an Atlantic stingray, but I know this is Borneo, so it's not. So this is probably a fairly closely related cousin. I think this is a honeycomb ray, but just gorgeous, gorgeous photograph of this beautiful animal. So lovely to see. Let's see. 2010. So, okay. And when was the IUCN Rare List? 2020. Okay, so endangered. So maybe this species, the broadfin shark, maybe it was previously given a better status and then now has been recently reassigned as endangered. So, which is awesome. So it's awesome that we have articles like this to kind of help hone in on how a species is doing. So we'll go back to this article. And it's kind of a quiet stream tonight, so once we're finished with this, we might end like a little bit earlier, but we'll see. We'll see if there's any questions on anything or any interesting tidbits of knowledge popping up. So here we go. So introduction. The genus Lamopsis was proposed by Gill for Carcharias temmincki, Muller-Onlay, 1839, which was described from several specimens from Pondicherry in India. Prior to the 1970s, this genus was often synonymized with Carcharinus, but was considered valid by Campagno from the 70s through 80s, so 1970, 1979, 84, and 88, and Garrick in 82. The genus Lamopsis shares many of the key characteristics with the genus Glyphis, so these are the river sharks, so it's actually really cool, because we've been talking about how they physically look similar, and it's actually really cool to see a research article saying the same thing, which in combination distinguishes them from other carcharinid genera, for example, dentition, large second dorsal fin and pectoral fins, and longitudinal rather than crescentric precaudal pits. Lamopsis differs from Glyphis in having a nearly straight anal fin posterior margin, larger and more ventrolaterally situated eyes, longer snout, and more posterior first dorsal fin. Lamopsis tephroides was described by Fowler in 1905 as Carcharinus tephroides, based on two specimens collected from off Baram and Sarawak, Borneo. This is tricky. A 63 centimeter. They said 637 millimeter, so I had to like reread that. A 63 centimeter holotype and a 37 centimeter paratype. Fowler did not define the characteristics to distinguish Lamopsis tephroides from Lamopsis temmincki. Garrick and Schultz in 1963 synonymized Lamopsis tephroides with Lamopsis temmincki. And although Fowler retained Lamopsis tephroides, examination of the types by Campagno revealed nothing to separate the species. Fowler synonymized Carcharinus sealii with Lamopsis tephroides and listed Carcharinus borneensis as a doubtful synonym. However, this is actually kind of fascinating. It's very fun, nerdy shark history. But however, Carcharinus sealii and Carcharinus borneensis are both considered valid Carcharinus species and are not congeneric or conspecific with Lamopsis tephroides. Fowler's misidentification is possibly due to the paratype of Lamopsis tephroides not being a Lamopsis species, and hence not congeneric or conspecific with the holotype. Instead, the paratype of Lamopsis tephroides represents an undescribed Carcharinus species of the Carcharinus porosus group. For example, Carcharinus species A. So this is wild. Okay. So a scientist, Fowler, thought he described a new species in the genus Lamopsis, realized that he didn't, but then accidentally did in the genus Carcharinus. So he did describe a new species of shark, but it's in a completely different genus, and we still don't know what kind of shark that is. So that's actually really funny and really cool. So he described a new shark, and also has a specimen of the broadfin shark. So very interesting. The collection of fresh specimens of Lamopsis during the recent surveys throughout Southeast Asia has allowed for more detailed taxonomic and molecular comparisons of this genus throughout its range. The present account reviews the nominal species of Lamopsis, resurrects Lamopsis tephroides as a valid taxon, and provides a detailed redescription of the species. Okay. One of the synonyms of Lamopsis temmincki is also designated as electrotype. Okay. So we won't go through the methods because that's a lot. We'll just kind of skip through that. Okay. So redescription: family Carcharodontidae, which is described in 1896. Genus Lamopsis, described in 1862. Type species Crocarius Prowdon temmincki, described by Mueller and in 1839. Again, same authors as the bull shark, so it's kind of cool to see their names again. Species Lamopsis includes two nominal species, Lamopsis temmincki and Lamopsis tephroides from Fowler 1905. Carcharodontis microphthalmus, described by Chu in 1960, is likely to be a synonym of Lamopsis tephroides. So we actually get a picture, I think we get a picture somewhere of this new species. Okay, we don't need to go into the material. Diagnosis, we won't read the whole thing, but for Lamopsis tephroides, it's a species of Lamopsis with the following combination of characters: a moderately long snout, similarly sized dorsal fins, lips mostly concealing teeth when mouth is closed, except near symphysis, which is like the little tiny middle tooth between the teeth in the jaws. Let's see, upper interior teeth broadly triangular, serrated, just like the other one. Lower interior teeth long, narrow, and erect, with non-hastate cusps. We will not do the measurements because they're just like, there's just too much information. And here we go. So this is the different species of Broadfin shark. So this is a cousin of tonight's species. And frankly, I can't tell the difference. It's hard to determine what makes a species different from the other one. Caudal fin seems to be the same proportions. Same with the dorsal fin. You can see very clearly the clasper, so this is a male individual. Maybe, if anything, I mean, the proportions of the pectoral fin do look a little bit different from the Broadfin shark. These look a little bit more pointed, but hard to tell. Here is another photograph of Lamopsis tephroides, so the new Lamopsis, new kind of Broadfin shark. Could be specimen, how the specimen was caught, but it does look like the snout is a little bit shorter than the other Broadfin shark, and the pectoral fins do look a hair more pointed, but again, this is very difficult to tell apart. The two dorsal fins are similarly sized. Anal fin does look a little bit larger, but again, this is very, very hard to tell apart from the other one, from the Broadfin shark. We have a complete list, a table of measurements for the species, which we don't really need to go into. But it's cool to see from a shark fisheries, like a, I was about to say, I guess you could say it's a fisheries scientist perspective or a shark scientist perspective. So these are, I couldn't even tell you what some of these are, but these are like length proportions. Literally the distances between, like, how the eyes relate to the gill slits, or like the distance between the two dorsal fins. Like, these are all the distances recorded in this table of measurements. So in the end, it's very, very helpful when you get to this nitty gritty of like how do you determine a species. But for a live stream, it's a little much, so we won't go into that in detail. This is a really cool figure of the jaw set of the new Broadfin shark species, so Lamopsis tephroides. So really impressive dentition here, similar to the Broadfin shark. So very large, triangular shaped upper teeth, and very long, narrow lower teeth. Really lovely view of the jaws as well. So nice close up. Great mineralization of the teeth. They almost have like a bluish sheen here, so they're actually really pretty. And you can barely kind of see some of the serrations. This is a little bit of a blurry image, but you can barely see that. So I know it's a fish eater, but those are really intense looking upper teeth, to be honest. So, these teeth clearly piscivorous, so clearly fantastic for gripping fish or squid. But the upper teeth, because they're so broad, I mean, they look a little freaky as far as. I mean, they're not too broad, but they do look pretty intense as far as whatever kind of prey that the species goes after. So. Nice close-up of the pre-caudal pit. So this is right before the caudal fin. It's a very subtle feature, but it is helpful for shark identification as like a very like a nuance, like a very subtle detail. It's kind of like the interdorsal ridge is another subtle feature that helps scientists tell certain shark species apart. Close-up view of the claspers. Really great photograph of the dermal tentacles. So you can actually see this is actually one of the best photographs. I mean, it's a little blurry, but it is one of the best photographs of shark dermal tentacles I've seen. So you can actually see very clearly how a shark's skin is made up of these really cool tooth-like features called dermal tentacles. And you can see how they work like armor, like they overlap slightly. They have these really cool rivulets that help the shark literally cut through water, and reduce drag, like increase flow. So, oh hey Bruce, what's up? Wonder why it's a slow day. Yeah, I do too. I mean, it sometimes happens. Like this year, we haven't really had a lot of them. Last year we had a few here and there, so I think it's just seasonal. I know this time of year a lot of people are doing vacations and stuff, so at least in the northern hemisphere, a lot of people are doing vacations, so it could be that. But by the way, speaking of northern hemisphere, we have yet another new country. I saw a commenter on one of my videos. It actually was last week's stream. I think it was last week's stream, but I saw a commenter on one of my videos saying hello from Norway and verified that they were from Norway, so we've added the Norwegian flag to our flag collection. So quiet today, but in the background, the international reach is growing, if you will. So, yeah. But hope you had a great weekend, and I was telling Howard I went to Assateague Island last weekend, which is really cool. I was thoroughly impressed, actually. I've never been before, and it was one of those places where it's like, I mean, it's famous on the map and everything, but I mean, you don't really hear about it too much. So, I mean, it's not like the Everglades or the Outer Banks. Like, you don't really hear about it. So oh no, Howard, it's a good chill Monday. So I hear you. I'm in a similar boat, probably kind of. As far as I mean, I always love talking about sharks, but it felt like a Monday. In a good way, just like a chill way. But anyway, I went to Assateague last weekend, and it was amazing. I really was blown away by it. It's a barrier island in Maryland that actually has wild horses, and the wild horses are allowed to roam completely free on the island. So they actually, come up. It's almost like going to one of the parks in the Midwest where bison can come up to the car, like Yellowstone and everything. The horses were able to like come up to the car, which is really cool. And like I wasn't even there for the horses. I was there for snorkeling and kayaking. So I had a fun time driving to Assateague, driving to a kayak rental spot. And the best part was it was just like a fun random trip planned last minute. I was like, yeah, might as well do this. It might be kind of a goofy thing to do. And I rented a kayak, paddled to this really quiet bay, or this really quiet cove in a bay, and then just, haul the kayak up, put on all my snorkel gear, got my GoPro out, and just took bunches of pictures of fish. I don't have any developed yet. Like I have to, because like what I do is like I review the footage really carefully to make sure that I didn't miss anything, and then I take screen grabs, and then eventually like have stuff that I add to my marine life album. I did get, I don't know if you saw this, Bruce, and forgive me if you did, but I did get really nice photos from my dive in New Jersey a couple weeks ago. But I'm hoping to have some photos up from Assateague. The big one being sea cucumber. I've never seen a wild sea cucumber before, and that was a lot of fun to check out. So check out some posts. Also, fun reminder while we're in the post section, we have our art contest underway. So just as a fun reminder, the deadline is July 20th, so we've got 13 days left. The theme is Sharks of the Gulf of Mexico, so as long as it's a species that is from the Gulf of Mexico, native to the Gulf of Mexico, enters the Gulf of Mexico, spends any part of its life history in the Gulf of Mexico, it's a winner. We have a few selections here just for fun, just to get started. So whale shark, lemon shark, mako shark. I didn't know that the cookie-cutter sharks were found in the Gulf of Mexico. Silky shark, blue shark, oceanic white tip, thresher shark, and there's a bunch more. So yeah, the banner contest theme, all the details are on this post page, but the banner contest theme is Sharks of the Gulf of Mexico. Bonus points if you can include Gulf of Mexico in your banner. So, but this is what I wanted to show on stream. These are original photos from underwater GoPro exploration in New Jersey. So this is a sea robin. These are really cool little fish with broad pectoral fins and highly modified. Yeah, me too. I honestly like me too. There's a reason why that's the theme. So, but sea robins are so cool. They're one of the most beautiful fish in the Mid-Atlantic. They're just very. This might sound weird, but they make me think of like a what do you call it? Like a ballroom dancer, like a period piece, gown. Like they're just really pretty. Like their pectoral fins are just huge and beautiful. The way these fish move on the seabed is just like very elegant, very 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 pretty. And yet they have these highly modified pectoral fins that have this like cool crawling motion. So it's a really weird animal to see for the first time in person. But this is a northern sea robin. It has a little bit of depigmentation on its pectoral fins, but it is a northern sea robin, and very happy to see it. This was a spider crab from New Jersey. So these got really big. The largest individual was the size of my head, which is really cool. Harmless crabs, but pretty freaky looking in the water. This is a summer flounder, just chilling out. These guys were pretty big. They're the size of dinner plates, so it was fun to see them. We were about 4 meters down, so that's like 12 feet down, and it was fun to see these guys all over the place. And then finally, this is a scallop, an Atlantic Bay scallop, with blue, the famous sapphire blue hot eye spots. Scallops have these like gorgeous eyes. They actually look like a sapphire necklace. So if you're lucky enough to see a scallop underwater, and usually you can find, I used to see them a lot in Florida actually, because I used to snorkel in the seagrass beds in Florida. I would see scallops like swimming, and when you pick one up, like the eyes are just super reflective and really really pretty. So, but yeah, those are highlights from the New Jersey dive, and I hope to have Assateague photos on the community page as well. But anyway, Sharks of the Gulf of Mexico is this year's contest. We have 13 days left, so good luck everybody. Cool prizes for the winners. One copy of Sharks Raising Chimeras on the East Coast of North America. It's a new book actually, and it's really good. I really really enjoy it. One copy of the Bull Shark Compendium, written by yours truly. And then a couple fossils, including a meg and a fun cousin of the meg, Atodes anguistidens, which those fossils are really, really nice from the Cooper River, South Carolina. Really very much enjoy having them here, and they make for a really fun contest prize gifts. So good luck, everybody, and I'm very excited to see what you guys bring for the contest. So, but let's see, we'll resume this study discussion. We'll just kind of skim through this. Oh, wow. This is a very, very old... Okay. Wow, this is actually really cool. This is a very, very old preserved specimen. It just... You could see just in the quality. The preservation technique is just very bad. And I mean, you know, this is a shark that is nearly 2 centuries old. So, you know, I don't want to completely knock it, but this is Lamopsis temmincki from 1862. This shark was preserved in the American Civil War. Like that's how old this is. It's kind of incredible to think about, really. So, yeah, very bad preservation, but still really, really impressive that it's even here. And theoretically, you may be able to get... I mean, you might be able to get DNA samples from this. You know, it's extremely old, but it's still really cool. So, from 1862, BMNH is the British Museum of Natural History. So, incredible to see this here. Let's see. Discussion. Although the holotype of Lamopsis tephroides was not examined, there's no doubt the specimen described and illustrated by Fowler belongs to the genus Lamopsis. As previously mentioned, the smaller paratype described by Fowler is referable to Carcharodontis species A, and not Lamopsis. Following examination of the dried syntype of Lamopsis temmincki in the British Museum of Natural History collection, so they examined this individual right here, in comparison with the measurements of the original description by Mueller and Allais, it is apparent that this is the specimen on which Mueller and Allais based their description. Oh. So this is the very first broadfin shark. This is the very first broadfin shark described. This is the very first one. It's kind of rare that we see that. So this is the physical individual, you know, that Mueller and Allais based the name Lamopsis temmincki on. So this is the anchor point for the entire species name. It's so interesting. It's like, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it. No, I was about to say like a human equivalent. It's like, no, that's just not a good idea. So, but anyway, it's really cool to see the individual that is the anchor point of the species name. It's kind of like, I think the best way to describe it is, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe it's in Europe somewhere, there's like a cube that is the kilogram. It is like, it's a cube of some kind of material. I forget which material it is, and it's a kind of metal, but I forget which one it is. But it is the literal standard definition of what a kilogram is, and there's a lot of cool things like that. Like it's incredible to think about, like, for metric units, like, what is the definition of an inch? What is the definition of a centimeter? Like, what is like the definition upon which all other definitions are based? Like, what is the like on your ruler, like all the little you know, tick marks for inches and centimeters? Like, who verifies that? Like, where does that come from? So it's the same kind of thing. And I think weight is a really good measurement, because somewhere in the world, and I believe it is in Europe, there's like a cube that is the definition of what a kilogram is. And, you know, likewise, this is the individual shark that is the definition of Lamopsis temmincki. This is the definition of what the species is. So it's really fascinating to see that. So, let's see. So we established this is the same species. The illustration of the species lack classroom, so maybe a different specimen or a composite. We here designate the dried specimen from the British Museum of Natural History, 1851. Selected type for Lamopsis temmincki. curious if these are... Okay, so these are upper and lower jaws of the broadfin shark, Lamopsis temmincki. So here we go. Really, really cool. And then, nice view of the teeth as well. So they look superficially pretty similar. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, it's almost impossible to tell the species apart from the teeth. Preliminarily, the broadfin shark's teeth look like a tiny bit narrower, but I mean that's probably it's probably where the position of the jaw that this photograph comes from, as opposed to the species itself. So, but anyway. Comparisons of the morphology of Lamopsis tephroides from Lamopsis temmincki was limited to the dried lectotype of the latter species, and a number of measurements in the original Mueller-Onlay description converted to millimeters using conversions from the German Fuss, Zoll, and Linné measurements originally used. Only a subset characters could be measured on lectotype. I'm just going to skim through this. That's kind of wild that they were comparing everything to a preserved specimen. This is a really cool summary, though. I don't think I've really quite seen one laid out like this. Differences between the dentition of Lamopsis tephroides and Lamopsis temmincki. Okay. So the new Lamopsis has upper teeth that are triangular in shape, both margins symmetrical. The broadfin shark has upper teeth more cordiform in shape, tapering just below the basal ledge. Very interesting. Posterior molliform teeth in upper jaw relatively few. So these are like flat teeth. Sand tiger sharks have teeth like that, actually. And I could show you an example. Let's see. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. I might have shown you guys this before. So this was a gift from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. So this is not a collected sand tiger specimen, because that is mad illegal. That's like poaching. But this is a sand tiger shark jaw. So you can see, the prominent, some of the teeth are missing, but you can see the prominent upper teeth here. And then as we get further and further back into the jaw, you've got these like weird, flat, small teeth. And this is what they mean by molliform teeth. I'm trying to find a good angle without hurting myself, because all sharks' teeth are like razor blades. And I've literally cut my hand open from shark teeth before. They're very, very dangerous. So, I mean, like, dangerous in the sense that, like, it's a mouthful of razor blades. And then that's not an exaggeration. They're extremely sharp. So... Let's see, so nice view of very prominent teeth, but when you get further and further back into the jaw, you see how they shrink and they become more numerous, and they kind of make more of like a plate, kind of like a ray. So these are rear molliform teeth, kind of in the rear of the jaw. So it's actually really cool that a shark has forward-facing, or sand tiger sharks have a forward-facing grasping teeth. So very prominent teeth, excellent for grasping like slippery fish, and then as a, ingest the fish, pulled it back further into the mouth, you have the molliform teeth that help with crushing. So I know my little window is kind of like small in the lower left corner of the stream, but I hope you can kind of see a little bit of that shift from the prominent teeth to the molliform teeth. But apparently in Lamopsis tephroides, the posterior molliform teeth in upper jaw are relatively few, generally 3 to 5 rows. Posterior molliform teeth in the broadfin shark upper jaw is more numerous. Howard, it can be steamed and reshaped into a more natural position. That's a great point. I actually should do this, because this individual that I have, it's very old. This specimen is actually from the 70s. What happened was, I probably shouldn't say this, but what happened was the specimen was caught in the 70s, and there just wasn't data on it. So it's like they caught it, they had the date, they had the species identification. I think they had the coordinates, and so they were entered into like the database. but there really wasn't much else on it, and there really was no need for the institute to really keep it. Um, I think there was something else I was missing from it. I couldn't remember quite what it was, but it was a gift. But it's a very old jaw set, is my point. So if it's from the '70s, this would be like, what is that? I can't do math. That's about 50 years old. So, but I could try to. I did clean it because I remember it had a lot of. That particular jaw set that I just showed had a lot of skin on it, a little bit of meat on it. So I did do a lot of work cleaning it, but I have not tried re-steaming it into a better position. So I actually might try that at some point. That would be actually really cool. So thank you. That's a really good suggestion. So it happens, yeah. I've already mentioned the story of I lost the gulper shark jaws. This was when I was a 20-something, like a young 20-something. That was the worst shark thing I've ever done. I had it in a location, and I think my parents threw it out on accident because I think they mistook it for garbage. It was awful. I just because I was like that's such a rare jaw set. It's worst shark thing I've ever done probably is losing a gulper shark jaw set. That just was very rare. I also had a sandbar shark, a young sandbar shark jaw set that also got lost. I was just like, it's not my fault. It was not my doing that those things are gone. So it's quite sad. Love my family, but I think there was a mistake. So, oh my gosh. So, and I'm not gonna acquire a new jaw set because it's like all three of those jaws were gifts from a science research institute. There's no way I want to acquire a new one. I go fossil hunting for new shark teeth. So yeah. Let's see. Oh, cool, Howard. You place it on a board wet using nails and string to reshape it. Interesting. Okay. It's kind of cool. It kind of makes me think of. This is a terrible comparison, but it does kind of make me think of. There is a scene in the infamous movie Jaws where Quint is like boiling the shark jaws, so it's kind of reminding me of that. That's actually a really cool technique, though. Place on a board wet using nails and string to reshape it. Interesting. Yeah, because when I cleaned it, this is going to be really gross. I used a mix of. I think I had a couple of different tools, like scalpel tools. So I had those, and then I used, and this is actually a very common technique, and it's very effective, but I used beetles. And that's not me being creepy. That is actually a very common technique that Vims was using on shark's jaws and other fish samples, because the beetles actually do an amazing job at like getting every inch of just like meat and skin and other things that we really can't with just tools like scalpels and things. So it's really gross. I know it's really gross, but it is very effective, and it's a very clever technique actually, that a lot of the people who were working on shark jaws that they used or applied to cleaning them. So that's one way to do it. I don't know how common it is, but it's one way to do it. So I can't remember what kind of beetles they were actually. So, but there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in Vims. I talked about specimen staining on one of the recent streams where they would dye bones and organs like bright blues and bright pinks, and then dye the skin translucent, and you would have these like really beautiful stainings that actually proved to be very helpful for fish anatomy, like understand or fish skeletal structure. Howard, I only keep or collect jaws for study purposes. However, jaws are gifted to me on occasion. That is really cool. If you don't mind me asking, what species do you have? Very, very curious of what jaws that. I'm assuming you may have Hemipristis, but I'm very, very curious to see what jaws you have. At Vims, there were Like some of the largest jaws I've seen at Vim's were the oceanic whitetip. They did have oceanic whitetip jaws, which are huge. Probably the size of, definitely larger than my head. I'm trying to think of a good comparison. They were huge. They did have great white jaws that were not as large because it was a smaller individual, but the teeth were quite enormous. I've seen bull shark, blue shark. Blue shark jaws are really very interesting because the teeth have like a very prominent curve, like a recurve. So they're really fascinating. Sand tiger sharks, of course. Sandbar sharks, of course. Shark-nose sharks, of course, because those are quite common. Some angel shark jaws. The rarest shark I think we had as a specimen, aside from the gulper sharks, we did have a crocodile shark, which is extremely cool, looking back on that in hindsight. And we did have a juvenile great white shark. But looking back, the crocodile shark is probably the crocodile shark and the gulper sharks are probably the rarest sharks that we had in that collection. So, I think the Vim's, I have to do this on some stream. I do think the Vim's collection is publicly available as far as like what's in there. So, and actually, another fun fact, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll make it vague. The Vim's fisheries collection, the Virginia Marine Science Fisheries Collection, is extremely impressive and rivals some top museum collections in the world. It's very, very good. There's one in particular that they call out, which I won't say because that'd probably be not so good. But they, I mean, not every place has a coelacanth. Like Vim's has a coelacanth. It's like that. It's that prominent. So it's kind of wild to think about. So, and also, I think I mentioned that Vim's has a mastodon tusk in one of their aquarium tanks. So I think I mentioned that on a stream a couple months ago. So so they have wild stuff there. It's a very interesting institute. So, and rightfully so. It's one of the oldest shark research institutes in the world. So yeah. As far as like properly doing like shark research surveys and stuff. So a lot of pride for that. Let's see. Serrations notes, very interesting. So Lamopsis tephroids, serrations on upper teeth usually coarser, basally on shoulders. Doesn't have much finer serration towards apex. For the broadfin shark, the serrations are more evenly distributed, and not noticeably coarser basally. Serrations are generally coarse in the upper teeth of adults for Lamopsis tephroids. Serrations generally finer in the upper teeth of adults for the broadfin shark. Lower teeth sometimes with very finely serrated cutting edges in adults. For the broadfin shark, lower teeth with entirely smooth cutting edge. So, and then finally, the Lamopsis tephroids has slightly fewer tooth rows, whereas the broadfin shark has slightly more tooth rows. So, pretty interesting differences here. Howard, awesome. Mostly Hemipristis. That really, really cool. Actually, extreme. That's actually awesome. I'm going to start this. Mostly Hemipristis, 4 stages of life. So that's actually extremely cool to see if there's any, I think, ontogenetic changes. So when the shark goes through life stages, do the teeth shift? Do they change in their shape and position? That's actually really cool. A decent-sized lemon shark that has a youth, several small sharks, a black tip, a bullhead, and a couple I haven't identified as of yet. Interesting. Yeah, if you ever get a chance, I would love to see photographs of those. So, yeah, if you feel comfortable and if you're ever interested, I would absolutely love to see photographs of those because that's really, really cool. So, we'll wrap up. We already picked our shark for next week, which is going to be the clouded angel shark, which is a great choice. And then we'll wrap up here. I'm just going to summarize the conclusions. Okay, all 3 of the molecular analyses showed identical interrelationships between Lamopsis and the ALK group. All 3 analyses also indicate that Lamopsis tephroids is distinct from the broadfin shark at this locus. Additional preserved or fresh material for the Broadfin shark is required to investigate whether the differences are accurate and determine what other differences there may be. The Broadfin shark possibly attains a larger size, or at least matures at a larger size, than Lamopsis tephroides. The lectotype of the Broadfin shark is the juvenile male, with very little development of the claspers, whilst the specimen of Lamopsis tephroides had well-developed, almost fully calcified claspers around the same size. So it's actually really interesting that the Broadfin shark at about a meter is not quite in its adult stage as a male. Like a male Broadfin shark at a meter is not quite an adult, but a male Lamopsis tephroides at a meter is an adult with calcified claspers. Awesome, thank you, Howard. Much appreciated. More specimens are required to determine whether such size differences are real. Let's see. The Broadfin shark is listed as endangered in the IUCN Red List of threatened animals based on its distribution in heavily exploited regions and its apparent rarity. Given the resurrection of Lamopsis tephroides from Borneo, this assessment needs to be revised and a separate assessment established for the Broadfin shark. So that's actually a little scary, although, again, this article came out in 2010, and IUCN Red List updated the assessment in 2020. And I remember this because 2020, as we all know, was a very bad year. And I remember feeling even worse because they updated a lot of the shark assessments that year, and a lot of them were not good. So the most famous one was the sand tiger. Well, not famous, but the most vivid one I remember was the sand tiger shark, going from vulnerable to critically endangered. So the last assessment, which was like in the early 10s or 2009, was vulnerable, and then it was updated in 2020 to critically endangered. A lot of sharks actually were updated that way, which is great as far as like, you know, kind of a call to action, like bringing focus to the fact that these sharks are in serious trouble, but also really sad. Oceanic white-tip sharks, critically endangered. Bonnethead shark was updated from least concern to endangered. Hammerhead sharks, scallop, the great, were updated from like vulnerable to critically endangered. So all that to say, if the Broadfin shark didn't change status in 2020, it might not be as bad as this article is describing. So endangered is still bad. I mean, it's still very bad. And to be in an area with a lot of fishing pressure, and to be a shark that is rare, that used to be common in that area, not good. One thing I am curious about is I wonder if there's ever going to be BRUVS studies, so beta remote underwater video surveys. That might be kind of interesting because sometimes you can have an area that does not have a lot of landings of a certain shark, but when you set up a beta remote underwater video survey, which records animals without any human impact or interference, you might be able to catch something. So we'll see, but it's not looking good for the species. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the article is describing, but it's not really looking that great. So, given the resurrection of Lamopsis tephroides, the assessment needs to be revised. Separate assessment for Broadfin shark. The absence of this genus from Indonesian waters, other than off Kalimantan, during extensive surveys of fish landing sites over the last 10 years, indicates that localized depletions have likely occurred. Both species occur in shallow areas, often near large river outflows, in regions with heavy exploitation levels. Thus, both are likely to be of conservation concern and threatened in their respective regions. So, really great article, and also really great DNA study here. Taking DNA samples of different species and planting together the tree. So I will post this article in the chat if anybody is interested, because it is really interesting. Excuse me. And actually, out of curiosity, I do want to see if IUCN has the new Lamopsis species in here, and then I think we'll call it a night. So, excuse me. Lamopsis. And it does. The Borneo Broadfin Shark, it does. And it is an endangered species. So it looks like IUCN has successfully assessed both the Lamopsis species. They're both endangered. It's better than critically endangered, but still really bad. And as a quick summary, it looks like it's probably the same information as the other Broadfin Shark. Yeah. So it's just population decline. It used to be prominent in this area. Now it's not. So it is an endangered species. So I don't want to end on a bummer, but I think it's good to note that both species of Lamniopsis, the Borneo Broadfin Shark and the classic Broadfin Shark, are endangered, and these are species that do need our attention. They are really awesome looking sharks, very unique shape as far as like their pectoral fins from whence they get their name. And clearly we don't really know a lot about them, and it would be a great species for future studies as far as like understanding their ecology and what role they play in their environment. So if anybody who sees this maybe in the future, currently or in the future, wants to be a shark scientist, Broadfin sharks would be a fantastic shark to study that has a real conservation need and is virtually, well, not virtually unknown, but like not much is really known about them. So definitely a species that deserves a lot of attention, and I'm glad we could at least devote some time to it tonight. So, but guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. And at the top of the stream is very, very quiet, which I don't mind because I do love talking about sharks no matter what. So if there is ever a stream where it's just me, not ideal, but not the end of the world. Again, I just have a passion for sharks and I love talking about them. But I really do appreciate and loved seeing, you, Howard, and you, Bruce, hopping on at the tail end. It was really cool to see you guys. And I'm glad that you could share this experience with the Broadfin Shark, just together. I really, really appreciate you being here very, very much and being an active member of our community, or active members of our community. So thank you. And I hope you got some more contest information and contest details, and I hope you both participate because I think it's going to be a really fun one this year. All of them are really fun, but I think this one with the theme, I'm especially excited for it. But anyway, I hope you both have a wonderful week, and we'll tune in next week for the clouded angel shark. So I think it's going to be a fun species and a fun return to squatini forms. But until then, cheers guys, and have a good night.